and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. We are back at a irregular Burning Questions time, very late for Pras over in the UK, and very early for me over in South Korea. So hopefully, we'll see how this goes. But it's our first evening stream, and I'm very excited to get this going. Pras, how are you doing? You are muted, by the way.
Yeah, I'm good, man. The tables have turned, right? Normally we do it at 3 p.m. UK, which is 11 p.m. for you, and today it's 10:30 for us. So I think for the listeners and viewers, we're gonna try and do a couple of these streams, especially when the clocks change in October, because I feel like Wednesday late evening is the best time to pod because the Champions League games would have finished, and you have basically the available information apart from the presser. So we'll track a few more. We'll see how it goes in terms of live audience and people's reception. But yeah, let's get going.
Okay, for today, after all the midweek games, we have on the agenda first fixtures from now till game week 9. So game week 6, 7, 8, and up to 9. Oh God, already starting with with the brain fog. And then we have a wild card for game week 9, and then we'll do fixtures from now until game week 12 with a wild card in mind. So just to compare the sort of short term and long term fixture landscape, then we'll do what to do with certain players, certain teams, and Chelsea defense as well. And then we'll talk about captaincy and then get to the bus teams at the end. So without further ado, why don't we begin with some fixtures, or not fixtures, transfers that's been happening on deadline day. Do you want to mention some of the notable ones, Pras?
Well, I mean, it's still happening, so we'll sort of react as things happen. But the things that's stuck out to me, Anthony to Man United. So this was sort of expected, but this basically has FPL implications in the sense that Rashford will probably lose his place on the wing. He will obviously start up top like we saw tonight, as long as Martial is out and Man United don't sign a striker and Ronaldo seems to be on the fringes. So maybe eventually he takes his place, but for the moment, I think Anthony and Sancho will be the two guys who'll flank. Um, I think Akanji to Man City was one, but he should be peripheral. I mean, he's a right-footed centre back. They already have Diaz, they have Stones, so it sounds like they're trying to beef up that place rather than a starting 11 position. Chelsea is interesting. So they had a couple of people, Aubameyang. So he's coming back to the Premier League. We'll see if this striker works for Chelsea. And then you also have Zakaria from Juventus who is looking to join, and they need a DM. So it's somebody who will kind of beef up that midfield until Kovacic, Kante, and everyone else is back, and then he can just deputize. So that one isn't a signing; it's a loan. David Luiz is possibly looking at going to Arsenal because they've got Elneny injury, they've got injury to Partey, so they're looking to fill that gap. I think Liverpool signed Milo, and they're looking at another midfield signing, I think. What else? Boli to Forest, could be an interesting 4.3 option. You have Willian, the Chelsea and Arsenal guy, going to Fulham. And my immediate thought when that happened was if he starts, he's going to take corners of Andres Pereira. So only FPL implications for everybody. Obviously, these guys, not a lot of them are starting 11. It's more about beefing up the squad, other than Anthony, I think. And then the one that could come out while we're streaming is Depay. I'm hearing that Depay is now a free agent apparently, and he's looking to join some club. It could be Chelsea, it could be Man United. We will see.
Yeah, very interesting. Um, okay, so let's get to the second section, which is fixtures. So this first one is fixtures from 6, 7, 8, and then the international break. And the reason being is a lot of managers are looking to wildcard out of the international break in game week 9. So maybe there's some punch you can take. It's very important to sort of know which team have the best fixtures for the next 3, sort of which teams fall to the bottom. And interestingly, we have Nottingham Forest up top, and a lot of managers have the main man in 4.0, Neco Williams. So possibly playable throughout the next few weeks as well. Then we have Brighton. I know everybody's very interested in Gross as well as Brighton defense. Personally, I do have Dunk, and I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on the Brighton defense, Pras. And then at the bottom of the table, we have Aston Villa, Fulham, Everton, and Wolves. And then, a mixed bag of the strong teams being in the middle of the pack. So very interesting. And first things first, I guess we start off with some overall views here, and especially what to do with players like Reece James, because a lot of us have moved off him, and it depends on sort of your strategy for when you're going to be wildcarding as well. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, why we're showing this is, like you said, it's basically now this is the time where you need to evaluate whether you want to wildcard in game week 9 or game week 12. These are the two big windows that are coming. Actually, game week 13 after game week 12. So, the reason for that is the strategy of what you go from now will depend on this window, because you can, if you're wildcard 9, you can start to dead end your team. You can look at some kind of punts as you reach game week 9. If you're looking at game week 12 or 13, then there's a whole other strategy. So let's talk about first game week 9. If you were to wildcard there, because people are actually sitting on the fence and they're thinking, if we are going to wildcard, we're not really going to change so much. Are we really going to sell our Arsenal assets? So what are we really doing with the wildcard 9? So I think if you were to look at that strategy, the first thing that jumped out was that James, for example, people sold or were looking at a double Chelsea. I think that's something that you have to reevaluate, because Chelsea have an excellent run until game week 12, in fact until game week 16. But if you had a narrow view of only game week 9 wildcard, then maybe you don't need to kind of get these guys in, or you don't need to prioritize them because they have the Liverpool game in game week 8. Other things like Brighton, second in the ticker. I think Leicester at home, you saw in the game against Man United today, Leicester looked completely toothless. The attack is blunt. The defense is there for the taking. So a lot of people already have Brighton assets. So Brighton, after game week 8, get their tough run. But before that, they're a team to target. So again, if you're aligned to a game week 9 strategy, Brighton is the team to get. My transfers, for example, last week were getting in Nico Williams and Gross. These are the two guys at the top of the ticker. So that was basically my thinking on how I'm trying to dead end my team, or basically target the teams that have the best fixtures until that point. So this is for game week 9. If you were to think about this strategy, Spurs aren't a big priority, so you don't need to be going for a Perisic, for example. If you have Perisic and he's not starting Fulham, clear sell. You don't need to hold on to him, because then he plays Man City after that. If you have Liverpool assets, you hold on to them simply because they have two decent fixtures, and then they have the tougher game against Spurs. And you can, it's actually away to Chelsea in game week 8. So you could look to sort of go from a Salah Diaz or a Salah Robertson and Trent and move them on to a, I was looking at, for example, Son or Kulusevski for a Salah or a Diaz, because again, Spurs play Leicester at home and game week 8. So these are players that you can look at if you were to look at a game week 9 wildcard. And then lastly, you hold on to your Arsenal players, even though they play Man United next week. Firstly, that should be a game that Arsenal should do well in. But still, after that, Arsenal play Everton and Brentford. And the reason the wildcard 9 will make sense, because after game week 9, they play Spurs, Man City, and Liverpool in the next 4 game weeks. So that's basically an area where you can sort of capitalize if you were to wildcard in game week 9. So let's go to the next slide, if you have, which what we try to do is make a wildcard draft. Obviously, things will change between now and an international break. But let's take all the information we have today and think, if you were to make a wildcard draft in game week 9, what would it look like? How many players are we really changing, and is it worth it? And we're doing this now 3 weeks before, because people need to sort of evaluate whether they're going down this path or a game week 12, 13 wildcard path. So in this draft, and this has taken 5 minutes, and if you've listened to Burning Questions last week, we use this more as a framework rather than telling people this is your wildcard 9. This is a framework. So what I liked in this draft is your goalkeepers. So goalkeepers, Guaita and Ward. Guaita, Crystal Palace has been top 5 defense last season. This season, they're again looking excellent, more in attack than defense, but that's probably got to do with fixtures. Then you have the guys who continue to stay in the team, which is Trent, Cancelo, and James. I'm not going to argue whether Cancelo is the pick or should it be Walker or Diaz. This is not for this stream. We'll get to a game week 9 wildcard eventually, but it's getting you a feel for things. Then I've got Fofana, who's obviously now moved to Chelsea. So double Chelsea defense, because you're expecting Kante to come back, them to basically sort it out in defense. So you can go for a double Chelsea defense. They are second in the ticker defensively, very good fixtures after game week 9. And then you have a fodder as your fifth defender. It could be Nico Williams, could be anybody else. Whereas it's interesting is midfield. So you've sort of almost overhauled the midfield except for Salah. Again, we don't need to get into Salah in or out on your wildcard. If you choose to go Nunez, if you choose to go no Salah, different discussion, different debate for another time. But for the moment, I've assumed Salah stays. You have Maddison with him and you have Zaha, two midfielders, again, with excellent fixtures after game week 9. You can jump off Maddison. It's the 8 million price point. Yep. You can go back to a Jesus in a double transfer later if you really wanted to. But I feel it's an opportunity where you can capitalize on Leicester's fixtures. Zaha, I don't need to say much. The guy has started 4 games and scored 4 goals, looking very good. Dewsbury Hall and Andreas Pereira are the two enablers. I think Dewsbury Hall only because of Leicester's fixtures. And then attack is where it gets also interesting because I think a lot of teams will move to a 3 up top formation because of the fact that there's so many strikers putting their hand up. So I think Mitrovic will be a shoe-in regardless of whether you're on wildcard or not from game week 8. Haaland looks to be the glue guy who will stay. And then you have a third slot. You could go for, if you had limited risk appetite and you think Jesus is still a guy to keep, you keep Jesus. Otherwise, you can go for Isaac. You can go for many, many other strikers in that price point, even Darwin Núñez, for example. So just a thought for people to think about. Now, you may look at this and say, okay, I can get to this team with 5 transfers, take a couple of hits, so I don't need to wildcard. Well, that's the point. So if that's where you are, then do that and start to look at longer term plays. So for example, people are asking, who should I replace Rodrigo with? My answer to that is, if you're looking at a game week 9 wildcard, the answer is a Brighton player or even a Gibbs White because they're top 2 in the fixture ticker. If your horizon is game week 13, answer completely changes. Look at releasing fronts from defense and get a Zaha or a Maddison instead. So that's basically the idea here. Are you looking to get your third striker? Get Mitrovic straight away. You don't need to go for anyone else. Get Mitrovic because after game week 8, his fixtures are amazing. That's basically the thoughts on a game week 9 wildcard. After that, we'll come to 12. But any thoughts here, Andy, from you?
No. I mean, I think summarized perfectly. And then
so is your strategy game week 9, or are you still open to any route that you take after?
I think I'm very open to game week 13 as well, because I think there is an opportunity to hop off Salah, and I know this is a talk for later, but this is because I'm very interested in trying to get Son in if I see some improvements in the next 2 or 3 game weeks. I think it's just 1 or 2 clicks, and then he could come back into the fold, and I'm willing to take that risk from sort of 9 to 12, where Liverpool have tough fixtures. So let's get to 12 first, and then let's compare the two.
Okay, so if you look at a game week 12 fixture ticker, then as I said, it completely flips in terms of teams to target. So then you should be looking at you should not be focused on Brighton. You should not be as focused on Arsenal or your third Liverpool slot or your third Man City slot. Now, obviously, Liverpool, Man City are great teams. They should continue to win. Arsenal looking very good. I'm not telling everybody to sell their Arsenal players. What I'm trying to say is you could be basically thinking about this. I see a comment in the chat, for example, that no one will sell Martinelli. Fine. If you think that 6 million spot is that important, I just feel that they play Spurs, Liverpool, and Man City. These are the 3 best teams at the moment in 4 game weeks between game week 9 and 12. Fine, if you want to keep Martinelli, keep him. But I just feel that from a macro perspective, right now, FPL is at a place where everybody owns 2 big hitters, and Haaland and Salah are the go-to guys because, frankly, nobody else is putting their hand up. No KDB, no Son, maybe Kane, but then Kane is taking up a forward slot. You have defenders that everyone can have, which is Trent, Cancelo to an extent, James to an extent, Fofana, everyone will have eventually when Chelsea's defense is figured out. So where are you really making your gains? So if you're going to hold on to your Martinellis and Jesuses, you're basically saying that I'm just going to kind of plod along and have my one or two differentials or one or two players that will give me rank gains or losses. So I'm sort of just trying to tease it out. I'm not saying do this. So game week 12, Leicester are the team that have the best fixtures in terms of attacking. I'm conscious that they're looking really, really poor. So you could land in game week 9, international break, and say, look, I don't want to target Leicester players despite the run. Fair enough. But Newcastle, for example, again, very, very good fixtures. They play Crystal Palace, West Ham, Bournemouth, Fulham, Brentford, Man United, Everton. So if you're looking for replacements in defense, people are asking, should I go for a James? Should I go for, if I'm replacing Robertson, go for Trippier. The guy, especially if you have a longer term horizon, very, very good fixtures. James also is fine because, again, as I mentioned, Chelsea have a longer term defensive good fixture run. They play West Ham, Fulham, Liverpool in 8, but then Crystal Palace, Wolves, Aston Villa, and Brentford. Again, very good team to target. You could start to think about jumping off Diaz because Liverpool will play Chelsea, Arsenal, and Man City between now and game week 12. You could think about reducing your Arsenal, for example. You don't have to have their defense. They play Man United, Tottenham, Liverpool, and Man City between now and game week 12. That's sort of the thing that's jumping out to me.
Yep. Can you see this fixture chart, Pras?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can.
That's weird. I can't see it. Okay. So where are you standing right now in terms of your strategy with wildcard?
See, the thing is, when I sold James for Nico Williams and Gross, I sort of made my mind that game week 9 is the strategy for me because the path that I think I will take is I may or may not get James back because I have money left to go Perisic to James. But I think the path that I've taken is I'm going to commit on removing Chelsea because I don't want the Liverpool Chelsea fixture in game week 8. I'm going to commit on removing Spurs. So take out Perisic this week because he plays Man City next week. And basically go for this dead ending strategy that I have for game week 9. Because my point is you could avoid game week 9 wildcard, look for 12. But even at that point, I can make the counterpoint. I haven't made a wildcard 12 or wildcard 13 yet because I think it's so far out that you'll be very far off from what you'll sort of eventually land on. But I think that you can make that case at any point. You can take a hit or two and reach a wildcard team because you're only changing your periphery of the team. You're not changing the core of the team unless you're going no Salah or something like that. So personally, I'm still looking at 9, and I think my transfers last week sort of pushed me more into that direction.
Yep, fair. Yeah, I think there is not a drastic difference between our current teams and the wild card. Maybe the trouble here is that you might be looking to just make changes for the changes itself. And I think the biggest thing for me is moving the funds up top and really going for that 3 striker because Mitrovic becomes a very, very good option from game week 8. And then, guys like Isaac as well. But I'm very interested in Darwin just as a third Liverpool option on top of Luis Diaz, even with the tough fixture swings coming up because we've seen how Holland has been doing. One thing is Firmino has been playing really well as well at Pras, so maybe that's not somewhere we can go at this moment in time. The big thing for me between 9 and 12 in terms of this week is what to do with James because there's a lot of James sellers as well as myself. And if I decide to wildcard in 9, for example, as a Cucurella owner as well, there's no need for me to go for James again or make the sideways move from Cucurella to James. Maybe it is not a sideways move. But if you're looking long term, especially a later wild card, maybe bringing in James is really good now because even from now till game week 16, Chelsea are up there in terms of fixture ticker as well.
Yeah. So look, we wanted to start this stream with this section because every answer will be dependent on what your strategy is. This is how we always work. Now, sometimes these things work out, sometimes they don't, right? I mean, for example, people thought Kane will do better in game week 1 against Southampton versus Haaland, who's away to West Ham. It didn't pan out that way. The next week, people had Haaland, who didn't do as well at Bournemouth. Kane did better. So it doesn't always work out, but you're basically sort of pegging yourself to maximizing the fixtures that your players will get. I mean, for me, targeting a Brighton player when he's about to play, and in my case, it was last week. So he was about to play Leeds, Leicester, Bournemouth, and Crystal Palace. No brainer.
Yeah.
So then you have to decide whether you want the attacker or the defender. Nottingham Forest, I mean, Bournemouth at home and Fulham at home in 6 and 8. These are playable fixtures for Nico Williams. I am very big at the back, and I'm a proponent of big at the back. You'll see that in my wild card. But I think if Nico Williams is a player that you can start, then why wouldn't you have him? So that's basically the thinking around it. Every question that will come henceforth, we will sort of have to caveat. If it is a longer term strategy, then you keep. If not, you do so, and so on and so forth. So that's what we wanted to start with. And now let's move to the sections on the key players. So what we've done this week is we've divided the sections into defenders, midfielders, and strikers, because the questions have been such that it's less team dependent but more across the board. For example, people are thinking Cancelo's disappointing. I know he scored this week, but in general, where can we go? Robertson has been a big disappointment. Where can we go? Shall we be targeting the Brighton left back or Trippier? So it's questions like that. So let's come to this table.
Pras,
Let me quickly describe it.
just
Yeah,
before we
sorry.
defender, I just thought of a question while you were talking about Nico Williams, because getting to know you this past year, it seems like I think it was a group chat recently where you said that you're open to being very risky early on in the season. Maybe could you explain what that means? Does that mean you're attacking the fixtures, or because generally it seems like you want players from the best teams at all times. But I was very surprised when you go for guys like Gross and Neco Williams. So what's your thinking between strategy there? Yeah.
I mean, like I said, these are the top two teams in the fixture tick, and it's only for a very, very short period of time. I may not play Nico Williams any other fixture apart from this one, which is Bournemouth at home. Maybe game week 14. Game week 8, just before wildcard. But my thinking is it was twofold. First, Nico Williams will give me a better first bench than Pereira, because Pereira's next two fixtures aren't really ones that I want him to come on, which is Tottenham away and Chelsea at home. So my point is, I wanted somebody who I can rely on, because I have Walker. When you have triple City, you're really chancing it if you just have a Pereira. So that was the first thinking, that we're getting into Champions League phase. The second one is, it's not about risk at all. I mean, I had 11 players from the top 6, top 5 teams just before this. If James wasn't injured, I may not have gone there anyway. I just saw an opportunity that I could go for. I could have gone James to a Brighton defender, obviously Dunk, which some people did and didn't work out last week. But I just felt that Leeds and Leicester were teams that were likely to score against Brighton. So I went for the Brighton attacker rather than the Brighton defender. That's what led me to 2 transfers. Maybe I should have just sort of done a boring Ward to Iverson move, because I would have got Andres Pereira's points and I would have still owned James. But that's more hindsight.
Yeah.
I think when I'm looking at a game week 9 wildcard strategy, I just felt that those are 2 players that are easily playable in the next 3 games.
Yep, fair. Okay, let's go to the defenders chart.
So defenders, we've picked out this table from the scout members area, and it's basically got all the defenders that people are targeting. It doesn't have that Brighton left back, Estupinan. I don't want to butcher his name, actually. We'll call him the Brighton left back henceforth. But this has got, what it's showing is Trent, Perisic, James, Nico Williams, Ben White, Zinchenko, Robertson, Trippier, Cucurella, Cancelo, Walker, Diaz, Webster, Gabriel, Saliba, and Dunk. So everyone who people are generally considering around their teams. We've looked at their current FPL points, their baseline bonus, how many clean sheets they've had, how many corners they've taken, how many shots they've had from set plays, so that whether that's free kick or a ball coming in from a set play that they head in. Then obviously their XA and XG, and then their XG created from free kicks. So it's a complicated table. Please take a screenshot if you need to. But a few things that jumped out. We're not going to be heavily reliant on data this early, but we just want to get some narratives. Is this thing happening, or is this something that is sustainable or not? So first thing that jumped out is Cancelo is looking really bad. He scored for us. That was lucky. City absolutely smashed Forest, which was expected, but Cancelo's goal, I think, was a little bit unlikely, because if you look at his stats so far, the guy has got an XA of 0.3 and an XG of 0.15. this is basically in line with, worse than Cucurella, who hasn't even played all the games. It's worse than Zinchenko. Nico Williams is way better than him. So when we think of Cancelo as that attacking fullback, he's cutting in a lot. So some games you'll get him going down the left-hand side, but I think he's been a little bit ineffective. And if people are looking to go off Cancelo, even for the short term, I don't think that's that bad. But the thing is, he will still continue to get the clean sheets. So the question is whether you just want to kind of stick with him. Perisic also disappointed as well with these numbers. So I know we looked at Perisic's first game and we thought, okay, this guy is, his XGI was the second highest after Kane. But after that, he's got basically almost a 0 XG. So he's not been taking the shots. He's not been involved as much in the attacking play. Sort of also goes to how Spurs have been. Spurs have been grinding out results rather than kind of smashing teams. Other than Southampton in the first game week, I can't remember when Spurs have actually completely bossed the game. So Perisic, for all the risks of rotation, for his attacking threat, basically his main output has been the 2 clean sheets that he got, and the one headed assist. Nico Williams has looked amazing. XA of 0.7, XG of 0.6. He's even taken a free kick, couple of corners, actually 8 corners. The guy is the attacking output for Nottingham Forest. Now, obviously, that's not a defense that you back. So this is missing a key criteria, which is XG conceded. But again, we're looking at a short window. And if you're looking, as I've mentioned, if it's good fixtures, he's definitely playable. What else jumps out to me? So there's 2 defenders that I was very surprised to see, which is Gabriel and Webster. Gabriel, less of a surprise because he's always been the guy who's getting all the headed chances from corners. And you can see that in the column on shots from set play. So all the corners, free kicks are aimed at him, and he's the guy taking those, and he's also scored a goal. But the one that is less talked about is Webster from Brighton. The guy has also had 6 shots from set plays. He's got an XG of 0.63. He's got no return so far, but this is exactly the kind of guy who we should be targeting because the underlying data suggests that a goal is coming from a corner. So I see a lot of people going for Dunk. I see people going for the left back, but look at Dunk's numbers. Dunk is 0.5, 0.1, 0.05 and 0.1 in terms of XGI. He's literally had 2 shots from set play. So he's not the guy being targeted on. He's not on set pieces. I know in the past he was taking some free kicks in prior seasons. So nothing that jumped out to me from him. And the last 2 disappointments that I had were Cucurella and Robertson. Both Robertson, I think, has generally disappointed because of the clean sheets. But even from an attacking perspective, I was quite surprised that he has, again, Cancelo-esque numbers from an XG assist and a XG, XA and XG perspective. So that's where I'm on. I've had a monologue on my defenders, but what are your thoughts here? And the key questions coming out of it are: should people sell Gabriel? Should they sell Cucurella? Should they sell Perisic? Should they sell Robertson? These are some of the questions. And if so, who do they replace them with?
All right. So first things first, do not listen to Pras Dunk owners. We move, and we will receive that bullet header in the next 2 game weeks, hopefully. But yeah, Dunk was just a pure clean sheet play. Plus, I was trying to save some money, and I like the chances of what Brighton getting maybe 1 or 2 clean sheets out of the last 3. Granted, they didn't get one this game week, but I'm pretty confident moving into the next 2 that maybe we'll be able to nick 1 clean sheet there. So first things first, Cancelo, yes, definitely. As you mentioned, his numbers have come down. We should take this data lightly because there's not enough data to really make a bold prediction on what's going to happen in the near future. But I do think that Cancelo's making the sort of pass to pass, pass to assist, pass to goal, whatever it is behind the FPL points. So it's very annoying. I think that his role has changed a little bit. I thought that actually him moving to that midfield position would make him more attacking, but now we actually want him to be much wider and playing sort of on the left and making those, outside foot ridiculous crosses that we haven't been seeing, that output from last season. So Yeah, but at the same time, right? Like the thing about City is about double defense City. That's where you want to be in terms of gaining, rank or not points against the field, and that was a big decision for me this past game week where I went for Perisic's upside. Granted, because we got that last minute news about him starting, but I was very keen on John Stones for a second there because I wanted that double defense. If you're going to move off Cancelo, you still need a City defender because they're just so highly. There's the chance of getting a clean sheet is so high, and you can just see it in the games as well, where they just dominate possession. So where do you go? Maybe you go to Walker, but maybe there's rotation there. Maybe you go to Stones. Maybe you go to Diaz, but and then you're really playing for the clean sheets, and so I wouldn't move off Cancelo just for the sake of moving off Cancelo. But if you're able to use those funds elsewhere, maybe you can move off him. Perisic, I think the thing you mentioned, Pras, about Perisic not getting involvement in shooting was a key cognate to what I'm thinking because in the games you can still see him make great crosses, right? Both left foot, right foot. And every single time the crosses are going to the center of the box or it's at least in dangerous position. So, that just speaks volumes of how great of a crosser he is. He's playing wide and Son's playing in, and that's a big issue for sort of both of them, which is why both of them are really struggling right now in terms of linking up and being a key sort of a combination on the left. So last season, Spurs on the left zone had attack 34% from the left and 39% from the right, zonal attack. 34% from the left is the lowest in the league last season. 39% from the right is the third highest in the league. And this season, they're about 35% left, 40% right versus Nottingham. They were 31% left and 41% right. So basically, I'm showing you a pattern here where they attack a lot from the right. And part of the reason they attack a lot from the right is, yes, Kulusevski as well, but missing Romero is a big issue right now because Romero is actually very important in the build up to the right. And when they move to the right, as we mentioned last stream, Pros, they'll keep the ball to Kulu and then they'll make Son make those runs behind. So Son is best at starting on the width and then making the runs inside. But Conte has positioned him inside because he wants to cater to Perisic on the wide left. And so Son is basically stuck up there, unable to make those runs behind, whereas Perisic is now being much more involved in taking up a lot more attacking sort of role, not in terms of stats, but attacking role that Son used to do. So it's very worrying for just as a Son fan and also as a Perisic owner. I think this is a big problem for Conte. He has to figure out how to get the best out of both players. Because both players overlap in terms of their strength. They're both left-footed. They're both making very good at both feet crosses. They're both good at making those runs behind. So a very interesting dilemma. I thought that because they're so similar, they would actually make them stronger from the left, but it's actually doing the opposite right now.
So before you go further, I think on Spurs and Perisic in general, I think we have to recognize, look, it's an X minutes thing. I think if you have Perisic, you hold on to him because he plays Fulham at home. If you don't have him, don't go for Perisic. It's quite simple. And if you have him, you look out for the magic beans of
Magic
Paul
beans.
O'Keefe.
Yep.
I mean, it's very rare to get credible. I don't want to call it a leak, but a credible prediction that has been right so often, and he hasn't been right all the time. It's almost like imagine if you knew the Man City lineup before deadline every week. You would basically go for Mahrez some weeks. You could go for Foden some weeks, and you just switch that slot around because
Yeah.
you get to know, and you get a nailed City midfielder. So it's almost like that, where if you can get a nailed a nailed Spurs wing back, you just enjoy it, right? As long as you have that access. So I think that's where you leave it with Spurs. They will figure it out. They're looking good for XG conceded. That's what matters. They got 2 clean sheets. They conceded against West Ham, but I think 2 clean sheets in 3 is great. They're the third best in terms of XG conceded in the first 5 game weeks. So hold
Yeah.
if you have, and if he's not starting, sell. Simple, and don't buy. Now, Cancelo, I want to clarify. I was not saying you can sell Cancelo or you should sell Cancelo. I was just saying his numbers are disappointing. So if you were finding an upside move in attack where you felt that, for example, Pranil did it the week before. He sold Cancelo to Walker and he went for Rashford, who got an assist today. He could have gone for anyone else. Maybe in attack, he could have gone for Mitrovic. So that's the idea. What I'm trying to say is you could look to sort of have a short-term view and get some money out if you really wanted to go there. I don't also think this double City defense is a must-have, especially because they play Spurs in these 3 games that we're talking about reaching up to game week 9. So you could look at an option of moving to a more upside defender, for example. For example, I will happily move Walker to Doherty if he's starting this week against Fulham. I won't even think about it. There's no upside with Walker. So I think we just have to sort of take that with a pinch of salt in terms of, yes, ideally in a world you need double City defense because that's the best defense. But now we're talking short-term window. So let's carry on. So we've done City, we've done Spurs. Let's go to Chelsea. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. By the way, the Spurs guy is Paul O'Keefe. Shout out Paul. And so yeah, Chelsea, very interesting now. Overall picture, as we mentioned early on, is that if you're going to wildcard in game week 9, maybe there's an opportunity to take the risk and go without Reece James. Granted, Reece James can haul at any moment in time, but if you're looking long term, then you want to bring Reece James in as soon as possible. He's not
Or
injured.
you shouldn't have sold.
What's that?
Or you shouldn't have sold in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
But that's
exactly.
that.
He's not injured. I think it was just a precautionary or illness, from what I believe. So he's likely and most likely to be back this game week. And also, I saw a very interesting tweet from Late Riser, where Chelsea have sort of the longest hours in between the games. So more time for James to kind of recover and get ready for the next game. But if you don't have James and you're looking to wildcard in game week 9, maybe you can jump off him. I want to present a very interesting pass map. This is from Between the Posts of Chelsea this game. And, there was some talk on Twitter about they're playing like a circle formation, like an oval formation with like basically no midfield. Chelsea's biggest problem right now is Jorginho. No offense to any Jorginho fans, but, the guy's old and he's struggling without Conte, and they're just their midfield is very very weak right now, especially with all the injuries and no backup, and they keep going for defenders. And if you look at this pass map, it's one of the most. You should also if you have a chance, look at the Spurs pass map because you'll see exactly what I mean by when Romero plays, how Son is affected, and when Romero doesn't play, how Son's affected. It's very interesting how this stuff works, right? Like totally different positions, but according to tactics don't always matter in FPL. But you can see sort of the yeah, anyways, so here you can see the biggest thing I want to point out is Cucurella. Cucurella is on the left. You can see most progressive passing is Cucurella. So granted, there is some hope for us Cucurella owners, but it's not looking great. So I'm not really sure what to do with Cucurella, to be honest, Pras. If I have Perisic news, he starts, then I'll continue to play Perisic. If I don't have Perisic news, I'll probably hop off him and have to play Cucurella. But I'm not looking very confident as a Cucurella owner. The clean sheet too is very iffy, and so yeah. And then
I think
how about
Cucurella
yourself?
is fine, to
Hmm.
be honest. I think there's nothing wrong. I mean, in fact, you got the best out of him in the last 2, 3 game weeks, whoever went for Cucurella in that period. Now, you didn't get the returns, but he's been playing left wing back pretty much the whole time. Even when Koulibaly had a red card, he played left back. They moved to a back 4. So he's sort of given as much as you. I mean, the fact that Chelsea are not keeping clean sheets, that's the bigger worry. But I think it's fine to keep Cucurella. I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't see him getting dropped, for example. He looks quite assured. I mean, if he was playing for Man City, he would be a game breaker because he's got a good pass on him. He does make the right runs. I think it's a Chelsea thing. It's not a Cucurella thing. So I wouldn't it's not an emergency out, but a lot of people are sitting right now with positions like they have nothing to do with the transfers. Okay, in that case, you can look for a second City defender, or you can look for a Trippier now that he has a good run coming up, or you can look for a Doherty if he's starting. So there are options in that price bracket, and I guess that's why people went for Cucurella. So I think again on Cucurella, I wouldn't say not an emergency sell. He is somebody, if you don't want to double up in Chelsea defense and wanted to diversify, maybe then you think about it. So that's where I am with Cucurella.
Yep, fair. And the last one
And
is
James,
go
sorry,
ahead.
on James,
Hmm.
like I think we're both on the same page that you could probably get him back as well,
Yeah.
even if you're on a game week 9 wildcard. If you had the funds and if you were so inclined, he's the second or the third best defender in the game after Trent and Cancelo, or maybe for me is equal to Cancelo. So getting him ahead of a fixture of West Ham at home and Fulham away, not bad at all. And then he has Liverpool, but fine, that's at home, and Chelsea are good against good teams. So I didn't sell James with a view that I'm never going to get him back, because I have exact money to get him back for Perisic if I wanted to. And I think that would be my advice to other people as well. If you wanted to sway, sway. But if you had the money and if you were inclined to get James back, I think that's fine as well.
Yeah, and Fofana, we didn't mention Fofana. I think he becomes very interesting on a game week 9 wild card as well.
Oh,
As
100%.
yeah, as a very cheap enabler, amazing enabler if you think about it. So we'll see how that works out. Robbo, a difficult one, Pros. Clean sheets aren't screaming, and also his attacking is definitely down. So it may. Do you hop off Robbo to get to another Liverpool attacker? Probably not, right? I think you still sort of have to stick with him at this point in time because it's 2 transfers, possibly 3 transfers, and I don't know if that's worth it because he could also sort of bang at any point in time. So the Spurs fixtures is definitely concerning, but at the same time, these strong teams and especially players like Robbo also thrive against teams that are better because they're going to be sort of attacking each other. You saw in the Chelsea versus Spurs game as well. Even though Spurs technically sit back and sort of defend and then go for the counter. So, what would you do with Robbo?
If I'm on a game week 13 wild card, I would sell Robertson. But
Yeah,
if I'm on a game week 9 wild card, I would keep him simply because you've got three okay fixtures coming up. It's the thing with Liverpool is the dynamics might change now that Nunes is starting, Jota is fit. So Diaz isn't as great anymore. And he hasn't, I mean, Diaz has been okay. He's basically given output in 2 games out of 5. So it's okay for an 8 million mid, but nothing great. But Robertson, I think, can match him, or if not do better than him. So it comes down to if he had something to do, and if that something is until game week 13, then sell him if you really have to. But I think I'm still high on Robertson. I think when you're about to embark on Everton away, Wolves at home, I think is a banker clean sheet, given
yeah.
that as on paper. So why would you want to sell him?
I sorry, I got confused. They're playing Chelsea in game week 8, and City's playing Tottenham in game week 7. So I meant the
Correct.
Chelsea game. Yep. Okay,
Chelsea are
last
not a
thing.
very attacking team. So I don't
Mm,
think having Robertson, if you were still on him and you didn't want to dead end him, is an issue. But my thing is, if you were on Robertson and if you were on a game week 9 wildcard, keep him, and then in game week 9 game week 8 move him to a Spurs wing back. If Paul O'Keefe comes in, you have a Leicester home game, switch him to a Perisic. So find your path which maximizes your output until wildcard.
fair. Last one is Trippier, right? Game week 9 wild card. You have an opportunity here to play him in Crystal Palace, West Ham, and Bournemouth, especially that Bournemouth game in 8. So maybe you can take a punt on him just in game week 8 as well. But you saw with Trippier, he can score and he's on set pieces and set piece monster on in the Premier League. So he can basically nick a goal at any moment in time, nick an assist at any moment in time against the strong teams as well. Um, are you very keen on going for Trippier, Pros?
I'm big on Trippier. I think I
Mm,
think he could be a great shout, both long term and short term, because Newcastle have shown that they're a tier 2, tier 3 team now. I mean, they're definitely a top 10, maybe even a top 8 team. Even with all these injuries against Liverpool, they put on a great show. I mean, they gave City a game. So in good fixtures, you'd back them to win them. So I think if you're getting access to somebody who's from a very, very good defense, who's taking free kicks, who's taking corners, who still has assist potential, I think for 5.1 million you can do worse. So at the moment, now that we sit in the position today, he's my favorite 5 million bracket midfield defender. He's not yet in the Reese bracket, maybe obviously not in the Trent Cancelo bracket, but in the 5 million, I think he's the standout for the moment, short term, medium term.
Awesome. Okay,
And
let's.
we haven't talked about Arsenal, and let's
Oh,
talk about Arsenal both in terms of Ramsdale as well as the others like Gabriel and Zinchenko. So I see a lot of people panicking on Ramsdale. I have to tell you, in the first 5 game weeks, if you look at XG conceded, Arsenal are second, very marginally, to Man City. There's nobody else. They're better than Liverpool, better than Chelsea, better than Spurs. So I would not panic just because they've conceded 2 goals. Basically, Fulham had one chance against of that Gabriel mistake. They scored. Villa had this free corner which should have been VAR out, and they scored. So don't judge the outcome, the decision by the outcome. I think it's a good decision, and Ramsdale is fine. You looked at Man United today; they don't have a lot of goals in them. I can see them keeping a clean sheet. They could, and definitely after that, the 2 games that lead up to Game Week 9 wildcard, if you were on that, that is Everton at home and Brentford away. Again, very easy, or you could see clean sheets in those 2 games. So I don't see the panic in removing a Ramsdale. Even if Ramsdale is injured, now of course if he's injured more long term, then you take him out. But even if he's out just for Man United, you play Ward. It's okay for 1 game. It's fine. Um, at the same time, if you're on a longer term strategy, when we went on Game Week 13 wildcard, then you can switch him to a Sanchez, because Sanchez has a very good fixture until Game Week 12. Because apart from Liverpool
yeah,
and Spurs, they play them in Game Week 9 and 10. I think
very
their
good
fixtures of
fixtures.
Leicester
Actually.
home, Bournemouth away, Crystal Palace home, Brentford away, Nottingham Forest at home. So they're decent. So I think you could make that switch if you were on a longer term horizon. And I think you should not make that switch if you're on a Game Week 9. And I have the same view of Gabriel as well. I see people moving off Gabriel. I don't see the need to do it. I think the guy is in the box. We looked at the data in terms of how he's heading the corners. He's been, in terms of baseline BPS, also at a good level, and Arsenal good defense. So my view is Arsenal defenders are a keep.
I think really well summarized. Again, if you're looking long term, maybe there's an opportunity to jump off and go to someone like Sanchez. If you're looking short term with a Game Week 9 wild card, it's not the optimal move, right? To move from one keeper to another unless there's a clear cut reason why. And maybe your clear cut reason is that you just don't trust Ramsdale, you don't trust Arsenal clean sheet. But again, I think 1 or 2 clean sheets they missed out on were really just, for example, I think it was a Saliba error once, and a Gabriel error, and very unfortunate errors. So I think that if you're saying Ward is playable against Man United, then yeah, he has good fixtures in 7 and 8, so you take those chances.
No, Ward is not Man. He played Man United today. So Ward is playing Brighton away. So look, Brighton could score.
Mm,
I'm not saying he'll keep a clean sheet. The guy has been very disappointing, but I'm saying he would be a stopgap to save your transfer.
yeah,
If
Brighton, yeah.
Ramsdale is fit, you play him against Man United. You don't play Ward. Leicester are rubbish. So that's not, you don't have to. But in
If
an
right,
emergency, I'm
right,
saying he's there.
if he's injured, yep. Okay.
What else? Last thing on defenders is Brighton. So as I said, right now I favor the left back and Webster over Dunk. I think Sanchez is a good pick, medium term, but these are not priority transfers. I see people doubled up on Brighton defense. I think for the next 3, that's a great shout, but longer term, I don't know. So in terms of XG considered, they're top 5, but they have had very good fixtures as well. So we have to remember that. So as long as they continue to have good fixtures, they're a good team to back.
Okay.
All right, midfielders.
Yep. Let's go to mids. Rodrigo, Neto, falling in price. What do we have here, Pras?
So this is now all midfielders under 8 million sorted by XGI. And again, I have to keep putting caveats because 5 game weeks isn't a long enough sample. And we're just putting the numbers there as reference. We're not using them as the only guide to judge them. But what we have here is at the moment, we have Zaha who's top for XGI. He's obviously scored the 4 goals, so he's actually performing in line, almost in line with his output. So looking very good. I think he will be a definite on game week, even whether it's game week 9 or game week 12 wildcards. I think he should be there as long as Palace continue their form. Number 2 is Gross. Now, Gross is an odd one because he hasn't had as much output in terms of your traditional outputs of how you look at stats was used to be big chances, how many penalty area touches, how much does he get involved in the play, and then now the more current thinking is forget about all of that. Just look at XGI because that's what matters. You could have had 50 touches of the ball, but if you're not shooting, what's the point? So XGI, if you were to look at that, he's had clinical chances that he's put away, and therefore his XGI is high. Brighton, we've talked about enough in terms of their fixture, so it's a team to back. So for me, I went for him because I feel like he's the standout in terms of that price bracket. But if you were to move up a little bit, I think you have Trossard, similar output. I think he's putting up good numbers as well. He's got an XGI of 1.85. You've got Martinelli. I don't need to talk about Martinelli. Most people own him, and he is the best in that price bracket, obviously. You had Rodrigo. Obviously, he's not an option anymore. And other than that, other players that are here in this list, Almiron. I know Baker went for Almiron because, frankly, he's putting up decent numbers. And he should have, in fact, had more than just 1 goal that he's had so far. He's got an XGI of 1.85, so he's underperforming to an extent. Then you have Rashford, who did okay, but I think he's not a pick for even the short term because he may lose his place even next game if they start Ronaldo, Anthony, and Sancho. Then you have Harrison. Harrison is a decent pick. Harrison actually has massively outperformed his numbers. He's got an XGI of 1.56, 1.58, but got 4 goal involvements. But it's fine. I think even on the eye test, he looks involved. He looks like to be on set pieces. My only issue with Leeds players now is if you're looking at a game week 9 wildcard, they have this fixture in game week 9 against, who is it? Against Man United. So I don't know if they keep a clean sheet or how many they score. Man United are looking better in defense. That's the only thing. But other than that, I think Leeds players are fine. You could go for any of them. Sinistera is not in here just because he has not played enough games, but he is basically looking like the Rafinha replacement that we thought he would be. So he's involved in the goals. He's basically one that we will probably have as the go-to Leeds player going forward if he were to go there. That's, I think, about it in terms of mid-priced midfielders. Who else jumps out to you?
I think there's a clear-cut route to a Rodrigo replacement, and I do agree with you, Pras. It is Gross. And look, last game was, let's call it an outlier somewhat because they've shown very good football for the start of the season, and I brought in Dunk versus Leeds, and when I was watching that game, I wish I had brought in Gross. There's no way route for me, right? Because I think you got him because you got Neko. So I can't get him basically unless I drop Martinelli, which I won't. And in that Leeds game, he was outstanding. He was just, I was just like, wow, this guy is a really, really, really good player. And sorry for my lack of watching Brighton over the past 1 or 2 years, but that game was an impressive game of like what this guy could be and an asset to FPL. So if you need a Rodrigo replacement, I think he's the one. It's a perfect marriage of good fixtures for the next 3, where you can jump off him if you need to in the wild card, and coupled with sort of him being probably the most attacking player on that team right now. I think the worry with Trossard is he gets subbed off quite often. So I think I prefer crossover Trossard, and he's rising quickly in price as well. So the rest of the field, I'm very interested. Why did Baker go for Almiron?
Oh, it's just he wanted to move Bailey on, and
Oh.
Almiron was 5 million as well. So I think there's 2 more that I forgot to mention. So there's Gordon,
Mm.
and the thing with Gordon is all the noises coming out of Everton are, we want this guy to be scoring more goals, double digits. That's what Lampard was saying after the game. Another interesting one is Gibbs White. Gibbs White is one of those classic non-casual pick because he's got no goals or assists so far. And so people who aren't actively engaged looking at stats will say, who the hell is Gibbs White? I mean, we don't need to go for him. But he's putting up 1.5 XGI so far. He looks very, very lively and involved. And if you're looking at a Game Week 9 wildcard, we've talked about Forrester's fixtures. They're absolutely brilliant. So you could look at a short-term punt on Gibbs White to basically convert his underlying into an output. So I don't actually hate Gibbs White at all. As a competition to Gross. Maybe some people can't get to Gross and they don't have 5.9 million. They have only 5.5 or 5.6. So I think Gibbs White is perfectly fine. The Wolves guys are out of the picture just because they play their fixtures in game week 7 and 8, which is Liverpool and Man City, I think.
But on that, Pras, every team is different, and people might have no burning holes to kind of take care of, or people might have a lot of issues to take care of. But if you had Neto and he's playing Southampton this week, what do you do there? Do you?
Oh, of course you keep him. You keep him. It's fine. I mean, we're talking about buyers here. We're not talking about sellers. I think in terms of sellers, Rodrigo's the only one. Otherwise, you hold on to whoever you had. This is not the position where you're punting for high potential players.
Yeah.
You sort of go for one and you stick for 2-3 game weeks or 4 game weeks. This is like how people did with Neto. How did people did with Rodrigo? Unless they're injured, you stick it out. So I'm not now changing Gross to anyone else, even if he blanks the next 2 games, because he's my 4 game week punt and I'm going to stick it out. So don't expect a lot. These are 5.56 million midfielders. If they blank, they're not, they're not Haaland. So, you can't expect output every game week, but be patient. If you're getting them at the right time with good fixtures, good underlying, you should be rewarded accordingly.
One of the aspects of a wild card that I do like is sort of I'm very big at the back is great, but you're also stuck on certain price points, and it's very hard to move funds, up front as well as in the midfield. And I really do want to invest in the striker slot and try to get some more 7 million players and 8 million players both in the midfield and striker. So that is a very interesting aspect of the wild card, versus just looking at players to player versus player and making a drastic change and this and that. It's the structure that changes that can benefit you possibly.
Yep. Yep. So
Strikers.
before you go to strikers, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
There's a lot of Martinelli fans who are saying there's no way we can sell Martinelli.
Okay.
He's just doing so well. He's the best out midfielder in the 6 million bracket. Zaha is putting up better numbers than Martinelli with way worse fixtures. And the difference now is 0.7. So my question is, when I showed the wildcard draft and had Zaha in it, you could argue you can have Zaha and Martinelli. It's not a one or the other. But I'm not as, if he's got difficult fixtures ultimately, and they have Europa League, and I know that Arsenal will probably rotate and he won't play the Europa League games, but they will still travel. They will still be tired. They'll still be playing Thursday, Sundays going forward. So where are you with that? Are you sort of, and I'll ask you the same question on Jesus as well.
Very
But let's talk about Martinelli.
yeah, very very interesting dilemma. I think you have time to make that decision. I really like the United fixture for Arsenal this week. I think these are the fixtures you want players like Martinelli in your team, because essentially you're not going for clean sheets with a midfielder. You're going for, I want attacking returns. I want the most threat. And the general consensus is that when a team plays a stronger team on paper, for example, you sort of want to not go for those players and target fixtures, but at the same time you have to look at matchups, and these are the types of matchups that are perfect for guys like Martinelli. So I think you have time to make that decision. You don't need to rush into selling him right now because he's performing perfectly fine. And I like that idea of 0.7 upgrade to Zaha, because there's also a difference between having a Martinelli on a strong Arsenal team versus having the talisman on a pretty strong Crystal Palace as well, who's, as you I've continually say, misses penalties all the time, but this season seems a bit different where he seems to be much more goal threat involved, and the pieces around him is also very good. So interesting, but I wouldn't go there personally at this moment in time. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. And I sort of disagree on the Man United game. I think
Mm.
Man United defensively are looking a lot better. Casemiro is going to start as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. I've been debating, by the way, when we'll come to my team, who should I bench? Because I have a benching dilemma.
Mm.
I don't think I'll bench Martinelli, but it came to my mind that maybe that's somewhere I could go, because do I want to double up in attack in an away game against Man United? But I think let's leave it at that in terms of midfielders. I think it's an easier slot. Defenders, we spent a lot of time because there are a lot of emerging options that have high potential. I think in midfield, these are, you have simple replacements, one for one. And I think, to summarize simply, I think Rodrigo replacement for me, one or two. I don't know which one is one and which one is two, but it's Gross and Gibbs White.
Fair. Okay.
All right.
Strikers.
Strikers, the most exciting part of FPL in this season, right? After the disappointment last season, you have here a table of all strikers under 10 million or 9 million, I think I had here. And so strikers is simple. It's all about XGI, and this is filtered by XGI so far. Unsurprisingly, Jesus is top. But I must tell you, he is also the second highest in terms of XG over performance. He has got 6 goals and assists with an XGI of 3.7. I have to again caveat that we're not completely statistics driven, especially this early on. And they had good fixtures. Every time you score a goal, you've overperformed XG, because no goal is 1 XG. So it's not completely out of the norm that he's overperforming, but it's just something to keep at the back of your mind. Then you have Firmino, who's suddenly become the next Haaland with every game. He's basically involved. I mean, this happens every year. There's like 2-3 game weeks where Firmino goes mad, and then people sort of fall for him, and it doesn't work out. And in a way, Nunes coming in, the only impact of Firmino is, does it mean that Nunes comes straight into the team given how well Firmino is doing? But I don't think we should judge the Firmino performance just by the goals. The fact of the matter is Liverpool attack isn't clicking, and I think Nunes does come back for that perspective. But that's aside. So you have Jesus number 1, Firmino number 2, then you have Tony. Excellent stats. I think what he's done, 4 goals and assists so far, are pretty much on par. I mean, there's slight overperformance, but he's had no penalties so far. He is on pens. He's very good at pens. I think those who have Tony have been slightly unlucky in terms of his output over the last couple of game weeks. He's definitely one, if you hold him for the next 2 game weeks, you don't need to switch to a Mitrovic straight away. And then comes Mitrovic, who is essentially the guy, the highest XGI so far, but that obviously also includes the couple of penalties. So on a non-pen XGI, he's number 4, despite the fact that Fulham had bad fixtures. They've played Arsenal, they've played Liverpool, and the guy's still putting up great numbers. This guy, I regret that we didn't even think about him in game week 1, because we were so fixated on fixtures. And that's the trap. When we think about fixtures for planning, it's a trap, because players can do well in bad fixtures as well. So I think Mitrovic after game week 8 will be in most teams. He'll be the natural third striker, or if in my case, in my wildcard draft, a second striker.
Wait, why do you regret that though? Because of what he showed last year, and because of the way he just dominated the championship, or
Yeah, so there was, look,
but
I think people
if you go
recognize.
back, what I'm basically suggesting, Pras, is that if you go back to game week 1, you still probably wouldn't have made that move.
I wouldn't have, but what I'm saying was, there was a moment in the final deadline day, game week 1, where the Perisic news broke. And what happened was, I had money in the bank for that defender. I could have gone for a 5 million defender instead of Diaz, who I ended up going for. And I could have basically made a 6.5 million midfielder or a striker out of it. I repeat, I was not considering it, but I had that money, and I always thought Mitrovic is going to do well this season. He's not going to be the troll. We've said it many times in this videos past, because of the way that they're set up. They are an attacking team that are looking to feed Mitrovic. The guy is on pens, so he's produced what we thought he would. A lot of us sort of got sidetracked by the Harry Wilson injury and thought that maybe their attack won't flourish as much because of him being injured, but it's not really panned out that way. So that's that. I think, look, Mitrovic is an easy one. If you wanted to go for him now, and if you already played your wild card, if you wanted a longer term horizon, I think he's the pick even over Tony. But what I wanted to say is Tony is putting up great numbers as well, so you don't need to make the switch from Tony.
Yep.
Then the next one is a Newcastle attacker. So you have Isaac, who did really well, 0.5 xG in the last game. He scored. You have Wilson before that, who was doing really well, 2 goals and assists so far. But more importantly, it's about how Newcastle have looked, even despite the fact that they've had difficult fixtures playing City and Liverpool. So there is definitely potential there to go, because there is no real Newcastle midfielder to go for. Maybe Saint Maximin if he's fit, but I think it's the striker, right? It's or Almiron, but it's the striker. So Isaac has got great pedigree. I think he will keep his place even if Wilson is fit. I don't know how the dynamics will work. Maybe he'll try a 2 up top or something, but I don't think Isaac loses his place. So he's a very interesting shout in that striker slot as well. That's at least the ones that jump out to me now. What do you think? What else?
Yeah, I think Isaac, if you're gonna take the punt, you go for him sort of now. I mean, now till whether you wild card in 9 or keep him for the long extent. Their fixtures are good, and Newcastle, as you mentioned, is a top 2, top 3 sort of top 2 tier team, a top 8, top 10 type of team in the Premier League now. So, yeah, I think you can. That's a good punt, right? Because, I mean, there's already enough talk about him being such a great player, especially with both feet, and he's already got his first goal, so maybe he's off and running straight away. I do think that the Mitrovic one is a no-brainer, but you could still wait. I mean, it's still risky to go for him for the next 2 fixtures. I mean, it's just tough fixtures, and I know, Pras, you're saying that he made this fixture thing false, but the opposite could have happened, and it was the right decision to play the fixtures. So just wait for him. I would say until game week 8, especially if you have Tony. Why would you make that move? So yeah.
Yeah, but no, I don't think you need to make that move if you're especially on a game week 9 wildcard, because you're getting Tottenham away and Chelsea at home. So you don't need to make that move, I repeat. But if you're on a later wildcard, or if you already wildcarded and you wanted to have a striker, just put him in there. I think then in that case you can go for him.
Last year there was a one move I did early. I think it was very early in our podcast Ting days when you mentioned Bowen, and I went for Bowen against Chelsea before everybody got on Bowen the next game week, and got away with a goal there, and I was sort of forced into it because I was pre-planning my transfers for the next week, and sort of just did it, and it actually worked out pretty well. So there's always the case of before everybody rushes to get him in, maybe you can sort of jump ahead of the curve and possibly get something in return. So yeah, the team dependent, as we all say.
Team dependent. All right, two other very, very exciting punts. Not punts, actually. 2 other strikers that we've not talked about. One is obviously Darwin Núñez. He's coming back from suspension this game week. Look, I think my perspective on him is he's going to be great. He's not going to be Haaland levels, but for 9 million or 9.5, I forget his price now, he'll be a great shout. So the question will be, there's an emerging theme of, is Salah too wide? How effective is he? I don't have any doubts that Salah will do well, but you could start to have arguments that, look, Haaland is the guy we're going to captain pretty much permanently, or most game weeks, as long as we think he's starting. So then why would you spend 13 million on Salah? Why not 9 million on Núñez? So I think this discussion is coming. And so my personal stance is, you don't need to break your team right now. Watch another 2-3 game weeks, how Núñez is doing. Is he taking the position right away from Firmino? Jota is back as well. How do those dynamics work? And then you can sort of evaluate in game week 9 wildcard whether you want to have Núñez over a Salah, whether you want Núñez plus Salah, or whatever, or none of them. So that's my view on Núñez. I think you could easily see this, right? That Klopp says, okay, I trusted you game week 2, game week 3, and you're sort of not ready. So I'm going to give you a little bit more 30, 40 million appearances, get you more bedded into the team, and then we'll take it from there. It could be a scenario. Or the other one is that, look, we're desperate. We're looking completely rubbish. We need you to kind of come in and convert the chances that are being created, or at least help with that. Or maybe he moves to a Firmino and a Nunes and a Salah Diaz formation. So anything is possible. Wait and watch. I don't think you need to jump the gun as such. You don't need to be the first one who owns Nunes. You can sort of wait. And then the second one is Alvarez. He was great, right? I mean, we're all only talking about Haaland last night, but he was absolutely amazing in terms of how he looked, how he took his chances, his movement, his finishing. Even Pep said that, look,
Pep loves
whenever
him.
we're
Yeah.
playing a team that is going to sit back, we will want Haaland and Alvarez, because I want two guys who know what they're doing in the box. So that was there was a little nugget he dropped after the game. So we need to remember that, and we need to remember that he will get some game time on the right. If Mahrez is injured, if Haaland has a niggle, he is a shoo-in for his price and for his output.
Yeah, could you imagine doubling up on two forwards for Man City? That'd be a cool moment in FPL history. Also, we forgot to mention Kane, Pras. I think a lot of people are considering the Holland to Kane thing, and also because of rotation, and
Yeah.
also if you're a Kane owner, that's really tough, right? Because most likely a Kane owner does not have Holland. I would assume, right? And so the obvious best player in FPL right now is Holland, and but rotation European games and question marks to whether he starts this weekend or not. I personally think he starts. I still think that he's young, and Pep kind of will still give him minutes and get him to start. And there's things like this that like stuff that you don't see, such as he's on 9 goals in 5 games, I believe. He's gonna be talking to Pep and saying like, "Hey, I want more goals. I want to keep playing. Give me more minutes." And Pep probably knows that too, right? He wants to make his young player, destroy the golden boot and keep going. And why drop your best player? So, I still think he starts. Whether how much minutes he gets or not is interesting, um, but Kane is 90 minutes every single game, and you know this about him in the Premier League, plus better fixtures. So what do you do? What do you do as a Kane owner?
I would 100% keep him, and I would captain him. He
Wow.
is the best captain this week
Mm.
because of the minutes issue with Haaland. And people will say that, look, this is why the Salah captainers were burnt, and they will continue to be burnt because they keep thinking Haaland will be benched and he'll never be benched. But look, you have to look at the practical side of things. He plays Sevilla, Spurs, and Dortmund in the next 3 games.
Mm.
There's no way he's missing out any one of those games. So the question then is, which one will he miss? Maybe none, and that's fine, because the theory that he's not running as much um, may be true, but we don't know that. We don't know his fitness levels. We don't know how precaution. All we know is Pep said, when games come thick and fast, Haaland will not play all the games. Simple as that. Klopp has never said that on Salah. Conte has never said that on Kane. So we have to go by that. And I'm not saying I'm not going to captain Haaland this week, but I'm saying it's a massive risk. So if you already have in my books, Kane versus Fulham is probably the best captain this week, don't make the switch this week. Make make Kane your captain. It goes back to the original. Remember in game week 1 when we had the game theory discussion?
Mm-hmm.
This was the time. This is the week where you have Kane
Yep.
and
Yep.
you will make a gain. Don't give up that gain just because Haaland has scored 2 hat-tricks. Go for it. Double down. Captain Kane if you have him.
Yep.
I think if you have Haaland, don't switch to Kane. That's the other thing, because of the fact that Kane plays Man City. So if you go Haaland to Kane, then you have to go Kane back to Haaland, and you lose value. So I don't think that's a move that I would particularly recommend. But other than that, let's get to bus teams, and then we can talk about captaincy.
Okay, Pras, you want to read out your team?
Yep. So I have Ramsdale in goal. I have currently starting Cancelo, Trent, Nico Williams, and Walker. I have Gross, Martinelli, Salah, and Luis Diaz in midfield, and have Jesus and Haaland in attack. I'm currently benching Perisic. That's only because I'm expecting Perisic or Paul O'Keefe's to say that Perisic is missing out. He played 90 minutes, man. I mean, he ended up playing more minutes than Trent, Robertson, and James over the midweek, which was completely unexpected. So I think if he's out, this team is fine. I don't need to deal with Perisic this week. But if Ramsdale is out and Perisic is out, maybe I'll deal with Ramsdale. If Ramsdale is fine and I feel like James is completely okay, then I might go for Perisic to James or Perisic to Trippier. So those are things that I'm evaluating, because I'm sort of in the I need to capture the upside mode, because I have 3 game weeks to do that. So I'm not going to be passive. And if I did do Perisic to James or Trippier, then I create a benching dilemma for myself. So I'm currently thinking I could bench Walker. Simply because of the lack of upside. I mean, it's a 6-point game for him. Villa have actually been quite free flowing and scoring against City over the last few seasons. I know that matters less, but it's a mindset. Or I could bench Martinelli, which I'm not inclined to do, but that's where. Or Nico Williams also I could bench if I got James in, for example. So I don't know who I will bench eventually, but that's where I'm at. My captain is currently Salah. I know it's really boring, but that's because I'm out of ideas. I have talked about Haaland. I'll see what Pep says. If Pep says that, look, he's. I know Pep's not going to give up anything.
Come
Why do I
on.
even hope for this? But look, we'll see. We all sort of try to evaluate how he's saying things. If he's saying that, look, he's been coming off, we're lucky that, the 60 minutes are working for Haaland, maybe I'll go there. I'm not ruling it out that I won't captain him. I did captain him this week and I took the X minutes risk. I think the X minute risk is higher. I look at the forums. I think shout out to Luke and Emma who do the predictions and Quicksilver. I think this really helps. So if I see Haaland in those teams, then I'll probably go for him. So that's where I'm at. I even considered Cancelo or Trent as captains this week, because I feel like Salah he had 0 XG, man, in the last game. 0 XG against Newcastle. So he got 2 assists. I think they were incredibly lucky assists. So well done, captainers. I'm not mocking the decision. I think the decision was fine, but the result was extremely lucky in terms of Salah's output last game week. So I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant to go for Salah. I'll see. But that's where I'm at.
Hopefully you're okay with me saying this, Pras, but one of the very interesting discussions I saw with you was how Salah effective ownership was lower than 100%, which meant that we would still gain from his rank. We would gain in terms of rank. I know rank is very irrelevant right now, hence we don't show it right now. But you mentioned that you still, as a Holland captainer, in some ways, wanted Salah sort of to not blank, but not do as well because of the fact that we're generally people who watch Burning Questions are very engaged, good managers, and our community is very good. A lot of great managers, right? So we're playing against this field, not the big field. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't think people should have looked at EO overall, even the top 10 KEO. It's irrelevant. It's made up of people who played chips, who've captained Jesus in game week 2 and things like that. So it's irrelevant. I think that the metric to look at is FPL Review has this Elite 1000, or Live FPL has Engaged 1000 or something like that, where that these are the people who will be in and amongst the top 10K. And there, Salah was 50%, Haaland was 50%, which basically means all these guys own Salah and Haaland, or 90% of them own. Add 50% captaincy. EO was about 140% for Salah and 140% for Haaland. That's what it was. So if you look at it in that lens, then you wanted Salah to blank and Haaland to score, and vice versa if you're on Salah cap. So I didn't really agree with you can root for Salah and Haaland if you captained Haaland.
Yeah. Got you. Great. Okay. We'll go to my team. Ramsdale in goal, 5 at the back. Trent, Cucurella, Perisic, Dunk, and Cancelo. In the midfield, I've got Salah, Diaz, Martinelli. Up top, Haaland and Jesus. First on the bench is Andreas. Very common team here, most likely, but looks fine. Looks good. Couple things. First of all, if you're a Robbo owner and possibly worried about rotation, which most likely he'll start. They do have the first game of the game week, so watch out for news there. Tottenham also are playing the second game of Saturday, so hopefully we get some Perisic news. So I would watch out for that if you can.
We should definitely get news.
We should definitely get news.
So, I mean, I'd say definitely, but you should definitely hold your transfers if you can until Saturday morning.
Yep, cool. Um, and then yeah, I mean, team looks good. Salah captain right now, but I'm 50-50 on Holland as well because earlier when we were discussing, I still think he starts. It's just 90 minutes of Salah is probably the safer route here, and then Duncan. Then I have one free transfer with quite a bit of money in the bank. I think like 1.8 ish in the bank or something like that. Because of the James transfer. Uh, if I get Perisic being bench news, um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to make a move for him because I don't like the fixture in 7 for Tottenham against City. Um, and then James obviously is, you know, an option
No, so
again.
who are you going for if
I don't know
Perisic is
yet. I mean,
benched? You're supposed to talk about that, Andy.
yeah, I know. Um, we'll see. I mean, maybe James, maybe guys like Trippier. I don't know. I really want to remove funds from the back. I wanna have. Um, yeah, I didn't really think about it. I've had a long week, guys. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so look,
mhm,
it sounds like you're waiting till Saturday anyway,
yeah,
and then you take it from there, right? I mean,
yeah,
have you thought about holding? Because you have money, you could really attack the game week after this. So
yeah,
if
yeah, yeah.
Perisic starts,
Yep.
you should just hold your transfer, right?
Yeah, if Paris starts, I'll probably hold too. I like having, the power of 2 transfers for next game week. So that's an option as well. I generally process, make last minute decisions and kind of play
Panic.
off the. Huh? What's that?
You mean last minute panic, not decisions.
But I like to play that way. I just like, last week too, I was set on double city defense over Perisic for like 3 days. And then as soon as Perisic news came, I was like, okay, maybe I'll go for him. And then made a switch. So I think that's the way I play, sort of like pretty safe in many ways, but also like panicker at the end, and I don't mind it, So mm,
Nice. All right. I think it's fairly late, so we won't do the Q&A, and it's been what, hour and a half. So
yeah,
I think before I ended, I saw a few comments on other stuff like Dalo. I think Dalo is a good shout, so nothing to say there. If you wanted to go there short term, I think he's fine. I saw some comments on Zaha not having great fixtures after game week 9. So why is he on the wild card? I think I think Zaha's fixtures until 16 are very good. So I would ignore the first two, and I would, you don't have to play him, or they do well in tough fixtures anyway. So those are a couple of things that stood out to me. I think don't buy Cucurella now if you wanted to. James is different to Cucurella in the sense that James will probably play right wing back. We don't know about Cucurella. He's still a semi-rotation risk, so he's not a buy, but James could potentially be a buy. But that's about it. So that's at least what I see in the chat from some of the questions. But yeah, how was your early morning stream experience?
yeah, yeah. First, thank you, Pras. I think you really had to carry me today because
Don't worry.
I wasn't functioning for the first like 30, 40 minutes. And then apologies to the viewers. I know I should be much more professional about this, but it was very early, um, and I think I'll have to get better at this in terms of our morning streams. It is still 7:55 out here, so I'm off to work. This week's been crazy, but next week I'll be much more prepared and ready to go. And so. Thank you, Pros, and thank you to the viewers. How about yourself? How was I know your jet lag process as well, so you must be going through
Oh
difficult
no,
time.
this is perfect actually. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know if you'll do it more often, but doing it in the evenings obviously it doesn't interrupt with work, and we can do it. I can do it without the kids sort of barging in, so it works really well for me. So we'll see
Awesome.
if we do more of this.
Okay. If you have more questions, feel free to sort of comment on, Process Twitter or my Twitter, or send DMs, and we'll try to get back to you if possible. So thank you guys, and good luck this game week, and we'll be back next game week.
Bye.